Okay, so I see we're finally live. Good afternoon to everyone joining us from the Gulf once again during your lunch break, and a very good morning and good evening to our international audience joining us now for the sixth installment of the RIBA Gulf Live Lunch Talks. I'm Mithuna Murugesh, the RIBA Business Development Manager for the Gulf, and of course, I'm pleased to welcome you all today once again. Today's session will be slightly different to our previous sessions. Today's session is completely focused on students and younger architects. Joining us from the UAE is Maryam, who is the Vice President for Students and Associates on Council at RIBA. Today, Maryam will be discussing tips on navigating the pandemic as a student and various resources she's gathered over time. So over to you, Maryam. We can kick off.
Hi everyone, my name is Maryam Al-Irhayim. I'm the current Vice President for Students and Associates. I have some slides prepared for you to kind of discuss about architecture and some of my tips. So I'll just share those. Okay, so first of all, welcome to architecture. For those of the students who are just starting their degree or those who are in the middle of it, wherever you are in your journey. So first of all, what is the RIBA? I guess the RIBA to me is a membership organization, a charity, an education standard regulator, a place of debate, and a place for the advancement of architecture. So what is the RIBA student membership? Well, if you attend an RIBA regulated school, you're eligible for a free student membership. If you scan that QR code, it will take you to the web page and you'll be eligible for a free student membership, which has loads of perks, which I'll touch on later. So why is architecture the best degree? Well, this is the only degree that kind of combines creativity and logical practice into one thing. I don't think there's any degree quite like architecture. So a little bit about me. So I finished my part 1 at University of Central Lancashire. I won an award at Pre-Versailles. I'm currently sitting on different committees, and I'm here to kind of tell you a little bit about the RIBA, and I'm currently in Manchester School of Architecture. So my role in the RIBA consists of being in the National Council, which is where all the elected members sit and discuss the issues that the RIBA faces. I sit on Architecture for Change, which is for diversity and inclusion. I sit on the Education Committee, which discusses different projects like the way ahead and validation of schools. And I'm also part of the RIBA Future Architects, which is a new chapter that I'm going to introduce to you later today. So the different outputs and projects that I'm up to really are kind of anything from the new education framework, the way ahead, to making videos, to supporting students from your journey from start to finish to becoming a licensed professional. And I'm here to really serve you, the students and associate members. And if there's anything, just get in touch. I'd be happy to represent you. So some quick tips to survive architecture school. So I think the first thing is to ask a lot of questions. There are no stupid questions. And so don't really worry so much about what it is that you're going to ask. You're not going to look like an idiot if you ask a question to your teacher or to anyone really. Sometimes it would actually save you a lot of time. Don't leave everything last minute. This is something I think everyone's guilty of. You're waiting for that adrenaline spike to kick in and to finish all your work. But in reality, if you've just started before, it wouldn't be such a mess and you'd be able to just be more in control, have a good night rest, and then do your work and presentation. Leaving everything to the last minute is really not the best use of your time. Enjoy the process. So architecture really is about the process, developing the design, getting from the first iteration to the last iteration. So it's really worthwhile enjoying that. And that's what you're going to be graded on. It's not just your final output, it's the development that goes along and the problem solving that goes along the way. Take advantage that you have this opportunity to learn. There's a lot of people who don't have access to university, and you're quite privileged to be able to attend university and have an education. And I think that reminding yourself that you're quite fortunate to do that and take advantage of this opportunity that you have in your time, that you're just going to sit there and study, is quite unique. So taking advantage of it and making it worthwhile is really the next step. Challenge yourself. Don't just, look at what your friends are doing, what everyone else or what society expects of you. You have to really focus on, are you better than you were before? And challenging yourself and your goals and your mindset. And that's really important, to be a little bit more ambitious. So engage with other things outside of architecture school. There is a life outside of architecture school. You can do some architectural competitions. You can attend talks. There's so many YouTube videos on architectural talks that are just free, live. So when you engage with these things, they would actually help you in the long run, because that allows you to meet people of different mindset. It allows you to expand your knowledge and find what you're interested in. And it also gives you an opportunity to have a life outside of architecture school. It's not just university in the real world. Technology is just a tool. So as much as there's this new kind of wave of like learn this software and that software, at the end of the day, it's just a tool for you to design well. So don't get too worried about learning all the different softwares. Don't be afraid of presenting your work. I think this is something that comes to all architecture students because of the way that crits are made. You have to present your work in front of your peers and the judges, and it's just so it gets you a little bit worked up, but really you shouldn't be afraid. I think it comes from this imposter syndrome that everyone has, doubting themselves and thinking, oh, my work is not good enough. I mean, for me, what helps me present my work is I think of it as a separate entity for me. Like, it's a separate piece of work. It's somebody else's work maybe, and it deserves some respect. It deserves somebody to stand up for it. So that kind of helps me when I present to just a little bit give some space between me and the work. Another advice is fake it till you make it. Believe it or not, everyone is doing this. They're all thinking, how am I going to everyone thinks that everyone has everything under control, but in reality, a lot of people are just faking it till they go along. And I think this is a useful piece of advice, that when you're worried, really just fake it till you make it. Enjoy university. This is a unique time that you get to meet your peers, so that you get to socialize, that you get to experience different things. So do enjoy it as well. It's not all just work. At university, you're not expected to know everything. That is literally why you're there. That's why you're going. That's what your teachers expect from you. They don't think that you know everything and you have the whole topic of architecture under your thumb. No. Ask questions. If you don't know anything, just get encouraged and take this opportunity to learn, because there is a learning curve with learning anything new. So don't forget that. You don't have to worry about having everything figured out. Take this time. There's going to be some struggle, but that's how you learn anything really in life. So well-being and COVID-19 tips. I think, first of all, we have to give some complete props to all the students out there who are studying during the pandemic. I don't think anyone would have really thought this was going to happen. And we really have to acknowledge that we're doing a pretty good job by staying sane and going to uni and trying to attend all our classes. I think later on in life, they're going to, people are going to ask you, how did you get on in the pandemic? Maybe down the line when you have grandkids or something. And I think that's when you're going to say, well, we went to university, or, we attended online lectures. So we have to remember that this is a unique, pivotal moment, and we give some props that we're actually making it through. And, we have to remember to take care of ourselves. Just like you take care of a plant, you'd water it and you'd feed it. You have to do that for yourself as well. You have to make sure that you take some breaks, you eat well. It's all the usual stuff that your doctors say. And it is really important. Don't obsess over your mistake. I think I'm guilty of this. It's just ruminating over and over and over again over any little mistake I do. If you say something wrong in class, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. And I think that you just have to take it, learn from it, and then move on, because obsessing over your mistake will just keep you behind in the past. Not everyone has their life together. So I think with popular social media and things like Instagram and everything, we have this kind of perception that life is this kind of perfect image and that everyone's living their best life and everything's great. But in reality, it's quite like a facade. That's not really what people show. So you have to remember that not everyone has everything together. We don't actually know what people are going through, and that it's okay when things are not okay. And you don't have to keep pretending. I think there's this overly kind of perfect life that we all have to, show on social media. But in reality, life is filled with ups and downs, and it's not just one pretty picture. Another thing is that, this is by Salvador Dali, he said, have no fear of perfection, you'll never reach it anyway. And this is kind of trying to suggest that you can't really reach perfection, so don't try to strive for it. And I think during the pandemic, with the stressful situation and everyone, not everything being under control around the world, I think it's okay for it sometimes to not be okay, to feel a bit overwhelmed. Cut yourself some slack if not everything is perfect as you would like it to be, because the world isn't perfect itself, and perfection is just something that nobody will really reach. So it's best to just accept that and be okay with different things. I think at home can mean different things and different distractions. You have everything from Netflix binging to whatever's on the internet to socializing so you really need to kind of think about self-discipline. So that comes to, I don't know if you've heard the story of self-control and marshmallows. This was a psychologist kind of experiment for a bunch of children, and it told them, they come in a room and on the table there's one marshmallow. They tell them, you can have one marshmallow now, or if you wait 10 minutes, then you can have 2 marshmallows. So then the person would leave the room and they'd come back and they'd see, would the child eat the marshmallow or would they wait 10 minutes? The children who didn't eat the marshmallow and waited 10 minutes and got 2 marshmallows actually ended up doing better in their life. And that's something that I think you should remember, that self-control. Sometimes it's not about the immediate reward. Sometimes it's about a delayed reward that you can anticipate in life. And I think that's really crucial to when you're planning your time, to when you're practicing self-discipline, that sometimes the reward is not immediate, it comes later on. And that you need a bit of self-control to get a marshmallow, basically. So online learning has been, I would say, quite an experience. You know, from Zoom calls to Teams to Skype to whatever you use, it's been quite different. It's like sitting there and your teacher's just explaining to you. And sometimes it feels like this. It's like more online learning, more lectures, more talks. You just can't keep up. And you're like, what did the teacher say? I'm not really quite sure. But you have to pace yourself and keep going. And it's okay if you're still going online. While some of us have also transitioned to hybrid classes of going into university, social distancing and wearing masks, I think that's in itself also a challenging, different experience where you're getting used to something that before you wouldn't have to do. And I think it's okay sometimes if you feel, you know, my mask's getting a bit annoying. Why do we have to keep doing this? But, you know, it's at the end of the day, it's for everyone's safety. But, you know, we are in a unique point in history of having to do this. So it's okay to feel a little bit frustrated. Following a schedule is really key. It's really important to plan your time and fill it out appropriately, or at least knowing what you're going to do in the beginning of the day so that you can have some structure, so that time doesn't just fly past. I think that's why it's important to start a routine, knowing when to go to bed, knowing when to wake up, having breakfast. You know, when I wake up, I always I watch something, I relax in the morning a little bit, and then I'll start my work after I eat and have a cup of coffee. And I find that very useful in my day. Meditation, prayer, whatever anybody wants to do, you know, make sure you're taking breaks throughout the day, socialize, and sleep is really, really important. This is something that I ignored in the beginning of my architecture study. You know, this all-nighter culture is very toxic. It is not the right way. And I think we've been tricked into thinking that it's the right approach. It's really important to get some sleep. You're actually more productive if you have sleep. When your mind is half asleep and you're sleep deprived, you're really not thinking clearly. What a normal task that could have taken you 15 minutes starts taking hours, and that's because you are tired and fatigued. So it's really important to get some sleep, or at least have a routine when you start to go to bed, because without a bit of rest, you can't work as hard as you can. And you notice with a lot of different kind of entrepreneurs, all of them, they all say that it's important to sleep. And I think that it is true. After trying both ways, I think it's important to sleep. So at least you'd be less cranky, maybe. You know, actually, this is a funny one. Taking breaks makes you more productive. So this is an interesting concept. A lot of people would assume that it's not true, but actually it's true. When you take more breaks, it makes you more productive. So if you take some time to rest after doing an agonizing task, take a small break, you know, 15 minutes, go have some tea, drink some coffee, or socialize, or even exercise. And that would really help you in the long run. When you start another activity, you'd be more productive than if you just dragged on and kept on going. And I think it's really, you know, you can look into this. There's loads of studies that suggest that taking breaks makes you more productive. And I don't think you should feel guilty for taking a break. I feel like that's something that people overshadow. But so in reality, try and take some breaks and plan breaks into your routine and your schedule. You can go ahead by scheduling 25 minutes periods of concentration. That's what I use. I use the Pomodoro effect, and just have 25 minutes of working, maybe then 5-minute break, 25 minutes. You can even move that to like 45 minutes once you get good at concentrating, whatever works for you. I use an app called Forest. I find this quite helpful. It's like when you start your 25 minutes or whatever countdown you want, the tree grows, and then you get to see like 5 minutes left or whatever, and you get to assign what tasks you want. And then at the end of the day, you get to see how many trees have grown. So how long have you been concentrating for? And I find it quite visually engaging. So then you can compare different days, see which times you're more productive. It's quite an interesting thing, but I find it quite rewarding to see your time in a visual way communicated. So you get a little bit of like a reward mechanism, like, yes, I did it, I finished 25 minutes, because usually you're the one who's going to kind of be in control of like, yes, I did it or I didn't follow it. So I find this app very helpful. So if anyone wants to download it, it's free. I think it's on most app stores, and check it out or find your own. So you make time, you don't just use it. So you have to make time. By that, I mean, you fill in your schedule, you block out the time that you're going to do this task. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. That's how you use your time. It's not just, oh yeah, I'll just get on with it and then time just passes by. You have to kind of organize yourself and purposely make the time to do something. Don't isolate yourself. Stay in touch with your peers. It's very easy in the pandemic to just kind of switch off and stay by yourself and think that, the whole world is moving on and you're just standing still, but that's really not the case. So trying to stay in touch with your peers with social media or anything, have a Zoom call with each other, try and keep connected. If you're struggling, don't stay silent, talk to your teachers, talk to your friends, family, get some help. You have to help one another and really be in it together. In architecture study is very competitive, but I feel that if we change this culture to more of a studio culture, which is trying to be open and sharing with each other, then that can make you all be stronger together. So when you don't know something, somebody else might, and it's quite a different community than just a competitive environment. So I'm going to talk to you about RIBA Future Architects. So everything from podcasts to YouTube videos, and the Instagram channel is @RIBA Education. We've had events from Class of 2020 Showcase to Part 3 meetups to Zero Carbon to handbooks being made. This is a handbook advice from architecture school written by students for students. This is online in the RIBA website. You can log in and access it. And it has everything from managing your finances to mental health to well-being to work smarter, not harder. And it's a very interesting resource and it has a lot of great advice. So if you're just starting out, I would recommend you read this. There's also the new Study Architecture Well, which is on the RIBA website, free of charge for everyone. And it's really about how to flourish in university and what to expect during your studies. And I was also part of this. It's a very good read that the RIBA has made for students. There's also Practice Architecture Well, and it's about moving on to working and how that's like to become more of a professional and how would you act in the workplace. So I think this is an excellent read for anyone who's about to bridge that gap between practice and education. I think that it's really important that you remember that education really is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. I love this quote by Nelson Mandela, and I genuinely believe in it. And I think it's important that all students remember this. So if you have any questions, start to type them up in the chat. These are my socials if there's any other kind of more personal questions or if you want to reach out. Now I'm going to move on to another presentation about RIBA Future Architects. So just kind of explaining what that is. So the future of architecture really is in your hands. The RIBA is a global professional membership body and it represents the architects and advocates for architecture. We're currently on 51,000 members and really trying to deliver better buildings, places, and stronger communities. It's to try and support the highest professional and ethical standards, attracting the diverse talent and providing access to education and knowledge and skills around the world. It's not just UK based. So be part of your local RIBA, which is here at RIBA Gulf. And I strongly encourage you to take part in all the events and activities that they have and run along the region. And even you can attend other events that the RIBA does in the UK that are online, I mean, those are open to members as well. So don't feel like you're just limited to only your current RIBA local. There are currently 20,000 student members. So with you, that's an additional one person, but whoever joins, that will just increase our numbers. There's 28,000 chartered members. There is 47,000 UK members and 7,000 international members. So why RIBA student membership? Well, it's free and available for all RIBA Part 1 or 2 students, and even for their year out between Part 1 and 2. It's for anybody who's in an RIBA validated school of architecture anywhere around the world. So make sure that you sign up because you're eligible for it and it's free of charge. You get access to member-only opportunities and events, to awards, resources. You get as well access to the different documents that the RIBA makes. You receive 50% discounts on member-only RIBA events and exhibitions and talks and CPDs, and you have access to RIBA scholarships and bursaries to support you in your studies, and you receive our monthly RIBA Future Architects newsletter, which showcases the latest student news, opportunities, and events and discounts. So the RIBA Students and Associate Membership is not only me, it's also my colleague Victoria and Stephen, and we all work as a team to try and better advance kind of like the student associate voice on council. So RIBA Future Architects has loads of resources on its website and also on its Instagram account at RIBA Education. And we always want you to get involved as much as you can. So join today on architecture.com. You can scan this barcode to go on the website straight away. It's on architecture.com, join RIBA free student membership. So make sure that you put in all your details and then you'll be a member. It's really that easy. There's different activities around the world. There's sometimes student mentoring schemes. This is something I'll just skip. There's different events. We had, RIBA Future Architects Live, that was on Instagram. We have the RIBA writing competition that happens every year. So the 2021 winner was about racism as a choice. So make sure that you get involved with all the different competitions. There's the RIBA Future Architects podcast on Spotify. So make sure you check that out. That's usually hosted by students for students. And if you have an interesting idea, make sure you submit and maybe you might run the next podcast. There's a YouTube playlist for different videos that we've produced. And different people have been involved in it. So some people from practice, people running their own architectural firm or whatnot, they give talks to students, and all that is freely available on our YouTube channel and playlist. So make sure you check that out if you want more resources and help. So make sure you take advantage of these downloadable resources, everything from guide to architectural practices to how to prepare your first architectural portfolio to how to write the perfect CV. It's all available on our website. And it's free of charge and accessible to all RIBA student members. And of course, the new document that I was talking about, Study Architecture Well, is worth a read. There's also the RIBA Awards, Regional Awards, and RIBA President Medals, which is very distinguishable, and usually around the world people take part to try and get the bronze medal or silver medal. So make sure that your university is signed up and you're also participating and trying to win one of these. There's also scholarships and bursaries, so make sure you check those out. The Architects Benevolent Society is something the RIBA is partnered with because the RIBA is really interested, to be honest, on well-being and students, especially during the pandemic. So that's something that we prioritized and we think is very important. We also have a reading list on the RIBA Books Online, RIBA Future Architects books. So it's all these interesting recommendations. And if you use the code STUDENT 2021, you get a 20% off. There's also RIBA jobs if you want to check out all the different job postings. And really, also you should kind of think what to expect from an RIBA chartered practice and what does that mean. So RIBA chartered practices usually follow a more high code of conduct and practice and are usually held to a higher standard than normal practices. And that's why it's important to also understand what is an RIBA chartered practice. There's also maybe you'll get into a chance to do your PDRs, professional experience development record. That's something you might have for the RIBA. There's also loads of different content for students, by students on the @RIBA Education Instagram page to check out, so please follow us. And we also allow different submissions from around the world, so make sure that you send your work so it can be featured on our Instagram. So any final thoughts? There's climate crisis, it's really important right now to kind of think about the climate challenge, and the built environment is responsible for 40% of greenhouse gases. So it's very important that we try and think about how we're going to deal with the climate challenge. It's also important that we think about the RIBA Inclusion Charter and how to be more inclusive and diverse in our profession. Architecture is not just a male degree or white male degree, it is for everyone. So we really encourage you to sign the charter, as well as to really be promoting that architecture is diverse. There's also the Way Ahead document, which you may have heard about at your universities, which is being rolled out to all architecture schools, which puts an emphasis on climate literacy as well as fire safety. So that's something that you can look out for in your education framework. There's also the Compact, which is something we're rolling out, which is a kind of contract for students to use when they go into practice. And so you could check that out as well. So your educational journey and what's next. So make sure you get in touch with futurearchitects@riba.org, architecture.com, Future Architects, and on our Instagram @RIBA Education. So join us as a RIBA student member. Remember, it's free, scan the QR code. And if you have any questions, let me know in the chat and I'll be happy to answer. So thank you, and that's RIBA Future Architects.
Thank you, Maryam. What a lovely session. Very interesting to know all the resources actually available to our students. So perhaps we can move to the interactive session with our audience now. So, please submit any questions or thoughts regarding today's topic in the Q&A bar in the right if you haven't already, and we can get to them. I see that we have quite a few actually already, Maryam. So we have a question coming. Can I be an RIBA student member if I'm not from an RIBA accredited university? Shall I pick that one up really quickly? So if you are from RIBA validated university, you do have access to free RIBA membership, which is, the QR code Maryam just sent. If not, you still, have access to RIBA membership. If you go to our website and, search for RIBA affiliate membership, you are free to join that as a member. So you definitely can be a part of the RIBA. Another question, have you found the RIBA useful to gain resources while studying?
Yes, I found it very useful actually. To be honest, I was always involved with the RIBA. So when I was a student, before I ran for council, so you have to actually run for council and get elected and voted in to be a representative. So before that, I was actually just a student representative and just kind of at university, and I used to attend a lot of RIBA events around in the region. So I would go to a lot of Liverpool Architecture Society events or some events in the northwest region of the UK. I think I would encourage you to get involved mainly with the RIBA. There is a newsletter. I always check the email. I always see what events are happening. I think now with the online sessions, it's become much easier to access events than having to go in person and access resources and information. So that's why I kind of encourage you to do that. And there's so much resources on the website. It's just kind of a little bit hidden. So just make sure you log in and check them out, because a lot of that has been made and provided for students, and a lot of people have worked on them. So I really encourage you to check it out.
Thank you, Maryam. A question from Khalil. Since you are based in the UAE, are you planning to create a RIBA students group over here?
I think RIBA Future Architects is already a global outreach. So RIBA Future Architects is a program that the RIBA launched to try and encourage student membership and give them a voice and support them along their journey from students all the way to becoming a validated architect. And through that support and that journey, it was really important to allow students to kind of start making their own events, giving them a voice. So we've already had, with the pandemic, we shifted from in-person events to kind of online events. And when we did that, we noticed that a lot of students from around the world have joined us. I mean, we had one person from Baku, Azerbaijan, send in a question at one of our events, and I was just so thrilled that, because in normal circumstances, you would never have such a global outreach. And the reality is the RIBA is a global brand, and there are RIBA validated schools around the world, and it would be really important to kind of include everyone in the RIBA student and have their voice heard as well. So if there's anything that you feel you want to kind of bring to the table, feel free to contact me or to ask a question or to send a message to @RIBA Education on our Instagram, and we usually always pass that forward because we're here to represent you. And I think that it's really important to include everyone really in this journey.
Absolutely. And we actually have an interesting question now. Someone's asked whether there's a difference in culture in teaching in the GCC as opposed to the UK.
Okay, I can actually honestly answer this because I did attend. I lived in Dubai before I went to the UK, and I actually attended Harriet-Watt University for the first year, and then I transferred to UConn. So I would say there is a difference to some extent, but not a lot. I think architecture education is very much standardized in terms of you will always have crits and presentation. So whatever you're doing here is really exactly the same as you would be doing over there. It's just you're in a different location. I would say, university life is still pretty much the same. You're still clamoring, trying to finish deadlines, trying to build your model, trying to finish all your work before submission, then uploading it online and hoping the file isn't too big. It's all that kind of general aspect that every student has to deal with. I think in the GCC, you're actually quite fortunate that you have more interesting architecture, I would say. Dubai and the UAE is quite much more diverse in architecture than some places. Obviously, London is different, but in terms of everything from Louvre, Abu Dhabi, to, you have the Burj Khalifa, it's quite a little architecture playground, really. So I think you could take advantage of that. And a lot of people, I think, in the UK are a bit envious that you're studying in sunny region instead of wet, the wet, rainy UK. So I think you never really know where the grass is greener on the other side. So I would say, the GCC has its own kind of interesting challenges in the region, and it's totally worth exploring the architecture around you as well.
Excellent answer, actually, Maryam. That's so true. You never know where the grass is greener, isn't it? A question from Khulud. How can I be involved with the RIBA if my university is based here in the UAE? My school is not RIBA accredited. I think you can still be involved with the Future Architects group if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you can still attend some of the events. Not all of them require RIBA membership. Some of the resources are available online. Like the YouTube playlist is accessible to all. You can still send your work in to @RIBA Education on Instagram. I think you can still at least, these resources are available for everyone. Some you have to log in, but there are some that are available online for free. So I do hope you can get access to that.
Absolutely. Another question, how easy is it to find a job in the UK post studying there?
Well, that's a challenge. I still don't have a job yet, so we'll see how that goes. But in terms of finding a job and working in the UK, it is important to be a validated architect, which you go through by going through a kind of a RIBA validated school or an ARB validated school, doing your part 1 and then your part 2. And then you do some work experience, so your PDR sheets, and then you do your part 3, and then, which is kind of like a coursework, and then you become a validated architect. So I would say, it's not easy to get a job anywhere, but if you've seen the new AJ document, it said that actually due to COVID, there's been a demand in architects, at least in the UK, because of the pandemic. So architecture services are on the rise and there are more jobs. So hopefully, maybe check out a few applications, and I know there's a whole visa thing, but talent is very much valued in the UK. So if you're a talented individual and you want to study there or work there, there is no harm in applying to different places. And a lot of offices operate as satellite offices. They operate around the world. I mean, especially the big companies, they usually have an office in UAE, and then, from that, maybe you can get into their UK offices or wherever you want to live and work.
Perfect. Another question regarding COVID, actually, so it's a nice segue. Without the support of fellow students and professors, did you feel isolated as a student during the pandemic?
I would say yes. I would say, there were times where I just couldn't take the pressure. It was very much, especially in the early days, when you have your deadlines, you just started kind of, instead of working with your group face to face, you're doing it online. And then, someone misunderstands something, or there's quite a bit of tension in there really because of the environment that's created. And that's why I think it's really important to have a very healthy routine and kind of sleep habit. I think I was a bit cranky a few times, but I do blame that to sleep deprivation. I think it's very important to manage your time. Without the support of my teachers, I think I wouldn't have made it thus far. There's always that one teacher, I think, that really kind of, for me at least, was really there for me, and I'm always grateful. So I think, don't be afraid of your teachers. They understand what you're going through. If you need to speak to them, sometimes there's counselors at your university, talk to them as well. And when you talk to other students, you'll be surprised to find out that you're in the same boat. Everyone has the same fears and anxieties. So, you're not the only one suffering.
Absolutely. Another question from Preeta. She says, "Hi Maryam, very good talk. Could you talk a little bit more about part 1 and part 2?
Okay, sure. So your part 1 is a 3-year study, which is called, it's kind of an undergraduate degree in architecture. So it's 3 years, you study full-time at university. There's also alternative routes that are being developed. And then usually what happens is somebody does a year out, so they go and work in practice, and they fill in their professional sheets and qualifications of kind of practice. They do that for a year, 2 years, or a maximum of 3 years, and then they go back to their study, which is when they start their part 2, which is a 2 years Masters of Architecture program. If you have a part 1, you can usually apply to part 2 courses. That's not an issue. Usually all universities recognize that you've gone through the education period and have the same experience. So I've seen a lot of students in the UK who may have studied somewhere else, but then decided to do their masters in the UK. I think there's going to be a part 2 here as well, going to be set up with Harriet Watt. So hopefully that will be interesting. There's also then a part 3, which happens after you have 2 years of work experience, and that is usually logged in your PDRs. Then you do a coursework and assessment where they ask you questions about your work experience and some specific things about your coursework. And then you become a validated architect in the UK. I think here it's a bit different. In the UAE, it's more, might not, I think you can still get validation, but in a different route. I'm not quite sure. So, but that's in the UK context, if that helps.
Perfect. And actually, a personal question, perhaps. Why did you choose to study in the UK first studying in the UAE?
It kind of just happened. It wasn't really like my brother was going, and then I decided to go, and I was accepted. It was kind of a change of circumstances of that I ended up in the UK. But I mean, I lived in the UK for a few years. It's a different environment. I lived around Liverpool, so for any Liverpool supporters, but it's a different experience. But I still like the UAE. It's not. I think I'm quite fortunate that I've had the experience of living in more than one country. A lot of people don't have that experience, and it makes you more of a global citizen. And so I do miss the UAE sometimes in terms of its international outlook on life. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, perfect. A question from Emma. Is it much easier for me to get a job in the UK if I graduated from an RIBA accredited university?
Well, I think with jobs, it's all about your portfolio and your work experience and kind of your work ethic. But I think they do recognize RIBA validated universities. Everyone is familiar with the RIBA. Certainly, if you apply to an RIBA chartered practice, so there are some practices that are kind of specifically affiliated with the RIBA, they definitely would, I think, look more favorably to that. But I think at the end of the day, it's down to your portfolio and your work and maybe who you know as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Perfect. Someone has said, with the current pandemic, how do you deal with the pressure of juries and crits, especially when they're virtual?
Oh, that's funny. We had that the other day, like my teacher kind of online. I think it's, well, everyone's watching you as well on the kind of Teams call or Zoom call or whatever. So it is a little bit intimidating. But I find when you present, you don't see everyone's faces. I find that much more helpful. So I actually get a bit more relieved, because when you're showing your screen, all you can see is your screen. So you just focus on your work and you don't look at other people's faces. And you just, if you practice it, or at least kind of have a hunch on the time, you won't go over the limit. I found it a little bit interesting. The teachers see your work more directly. So when it's actually laid out, the advantage of seeing it on screen is that they see exactly which frame you're talking about at that moment. So they see exactly what you mean. When they see all your work, they can look everywhere. So you have more focused attention on what you're trying to communicate. So I found that actually a bit more helpful. In terms of jury members, I feel we ended up having kind of different people from around the world join us. So perhaps if we were in person, we wouldn't have access to these different viewpoints. So I think that there's always a good, positive and a negative to kind of online and offline. So the positive is that you get different opinions from people around the world. They could be in Greece, they could be in America, and they can join in and do a crit from their bedroom. But if you were in person, they'd have to fly in. So there is that. So I think with anything to do with presentation, for me, at least, I always think of it as it's not my work, because whenever I think it's my work, I get a little bit overly critical. It's a piece of work. It is what it is. It's what I produced over a period of time, and then I present my work. And, you have to kind of encourage yourself. The work deserves some credit as well. You have to, support your work and acknowledge it and, defend it sometimes. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely, and I think we're close to our ending time, so perhaps another one or two questions. We have a question here saying, how does the RIBA help me as a student? Should I join?
Of course you should join, because it's free of charge, so you're not actually paying anything. There are so many different benefits. So there's a lot of online resources that are available on the website on architecture.com. There's also a newsletter from RIBA Future Architects, so you can get involved with that. There's all these different events that you would be subscribed to. There's even loads of online lectures and talks that are available on RIBA Academy. There is also the RIBA YouTube playlist, which is available for the public as well. And if you follow the @RIBA Education, you get to see a lot of students' works and different events that are being held. And because of the kind of online framework that we're working, you get access to these events wherever you are in the world. So you could be sitting at home, and then watching a talk from somebody in America. I don't know, the sky is the limit nowadays. So I hope that is helpful.
Absolutely, and I think I found a lovely comment to actually end today's session. An attendee has said, "Thank you, Maryam. You are truly a role model to architecture students."
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much.
Perfect. So if there are no further questions that I can actually see, if there are no further questions, perhaps we can close today's session. A huge thank you, Maryam, for joining us today, for taking time out of your day, to join us midweek on your lunch break. And also thank you to everyone for joining us on your lunch break from within the Gulf as well. Once again, if you'd like to join the RIBA, please send us a note in the chat bar alongside, or send us an email and the team will follow up with you personally. I think that's about it for today. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Maryam, and of course, thank you, Alden, for the back-end support.